Hello, my name is Samer Al-Badri, a doctor from Libya, and today we will going to explain a new theory or a new way for the moon formation, which could be the only way the moon could form, or which could be the only way that explain why Jupiter has 79 moons while the Earth has only one moon. In other words, this way may be able to explain the reason behind the difference in moon's number between the planets. It also might be able to explain the reason behind the great similarity in composition between Earth and Moon's rocks. This theory about the moon formation that we will explain today is a part of a book which also explains the mechanism or the way by which the universe has been formed. We will try to publish this book very soon, but if we couldn't, then we will explain it by a series of videos which will be uploaded on this channel. It's proven in the scientific community that every object in the solar system has its specific and special ratio of oxygen isotopes, which can be measured with a high accuracy, and it's different for each object in the solar system, which means that there is no two objects in the solar system has the same ratio of oxygen isotopes, except if they was originated from the same source. So if this objects has been originated from the same source, they will have the same ratio of oxygen isotopes. And after the Apollo project, which was launched by NASA agency, through which they were able to collect 2,415 samples of moon rocks and study it in detail, it turns out that the ratio of oxygen isotopes in the moon rocks is nearly or exactly the same of its ratio on Earth's rocks. Also, tungsten and titanium isotopes ratio was very close to its ratio on Earth rocks. The age of the moon rocks was also measured by the radiometric dating, and it was very much the same of the Earth's rocks age. And according to this information and facts, scientists has come up with some theories about the moon formation. The first and the most acceptable theory, it's called the giant impact theory. In this theory, the Earth is assumed to be existed beforehand. In this theory, the Earth is assumed to be existed previously. And the giant asteroid with the size of Mars, called Theia, have impacted the Earth, which previously existed. Debris has been formed around the Earth due to this impact. A debris has been formed around the Earth due to this impact. And somehow, this debris has been fused and joined together to form the moon. But this theory does not explain the reason behind the great similarity in composition between Earth and Moon. Since Theia source is not, or since Theia source might be even from outside the solar system, and that means its composition will be very different. This theory also cannot explain the different or the reason behind the difference in Moon's number between the planets. Also, such impacts will displace the Earth from its orbit or its path significantly. The second theory assumed that an impact happened between two large objects. An impact happens between two large objects. And a debris has been formed due to this collision. This impact, this debris, somehow this debris fused and joined it together to form the Earth and its moon. This is the second theory. Another theory, call it the capture theory, which assumed that the moon, the capture theory assumed that the moon formed outside of our solar system, and during its passage in our solar system, the Earth captured it by the force of the gravity, and this object became our moon. But also, this theory does not explain the similarity in composition between the Earth and Moon, because this object is from outside the solar system. Also, this theory is not logical from the point of view of physics, because this object needs a fine tuning. This object, during its passage inside our solar system, and to be captured by the Earth and becoming, this process needs a fine tuning, as it requires this moon to slow down to the appropriate or right speed at the right time. Anyway, the most acceptable theories are the giant impact theory, which assumed the pre-existence of the Earth, and an impact or an asteroid with the size of Mars called Theia has impacted the Earth. A debris has been formed, and this debris somehow fused and joined together to form our moon. This theory is one of the most acceptable theories. The other one is the impact between the two large objects which form the debris, and this debris somehow could be joined and fused together to form our Earth and its moon. And these two theories also not right, and we will know why in a moment. Solid objects and debris in space does not fuse that easily. Solid objects and debris does not fuse that easily in space, as the fusion of two objects in space need a high speed and a high temperature and strong impact for two objects in space to fuse. This will need a high speeds and a high temperature and also a strong impacts. And even in these conditions, colloiding solid objects not fuse completely, even with high speeds and high temperature and strong impacts. These two solid objects cannot fuse completely. According to the Newton's law, every action has a reaction. So this colliding debris or objects in space will repel each other after the collision. Also, there is no object in space. There is no object in space can take the spherical or oval shape, except if it was fusible at its primary state. No solid object in space can take the oval or the spherical or oval shape, except if it was fusible at its primary state and rotating around itself. If this object or any other object wasn't molten at its primary state and rotating around its axis or itself, it won't be able to take the spherical or oval shape. And that's what makes the above mentioned theories cannot be right, because the debris cannot be fused that easily, and spherical or oval shaped cannot be taken by solid objects. But now, and so that we can understand the way or the steps by which the moon have been formed, we have first to understand the rock cycle on Earth. Of course, we all know the rock cycle on Earth or of the Earth. But we will do a quick revision for it. We know that our Earth is composed of molten core, molten moving core. This is the Earth. This is the core of the Earth, which is molten. And this is the crust of the Earth, rocky crust. earth crust, the crust of the earth, is consistent of three main types of rock: igneous rocks, and sedimentary rocks, metamorphic rocks. Igneous rocks, when exposed to erosion, it will be fragmented and deposited in the aqueous media like rivers, oceans, and seas. After its deposition in the oceans, rivers, and seas, it will combine with the mineral salts and other elements and precipitate in the aqueous media in form of layers. And this will form the sedimentary rocks. The sedimentary rocks, after exposure or if it's exposed to the high pressure and temperature, it will become its shape will change it and become metamorphic rocks. This metamorphic rocks, if it exposed to the higher temperature and higher pressure, it will be molten. And become a magma. This magma, if it's cooled down, it will form the igneous rocks. And that's mean that the source of all main rocks on Earth is the igneous rocks. And igneous rocks does not form it except if the magma have been cooled down. So when the magma is cooled down, it's forming the igneous rocks. And that assumed, this rock cycle on the Earth assumed that the Earth was a molten mass floats in space. The rock cycle assumed that the Earth was a molten mass floats in space and spinning around itself. And that's why the Earth was able to take the spherical or the oval shape. So the Earth was molten mass spinning around itself and floating in space. And as we know, the molten core of the Earth consists of radioactive elements. As we know, that the molten core of the Earth, the molten core, consists of a radioactive elements as uranium 238 and thorium 232 and potassium 40 and many other radioactive elements, but the most common, these three. Anyway, we also know that the radiation of these radioactive element, rises the temperature. Or responsible for the core high temperature. And this high temperature responsible for the continuous movement of the core. Because we all know that the Earth's core is in a continuous movement, and it's because we all know that the Earth's core is in a continuous movement. And what makes the Earth core in a continuous movement is the high temperature. It's high temperature. And this high temperature coming from the radiation that emitted from the radioactive materials, or from the radioactive elements. And this continuous movement or motion of the Earth core is responsible for producing the special electromagnetic field of the Earth, which protecting us from solar winds and ultraviolet lights. This radioactive element, which is responsible for rising the temperature of the core and its motion, and producing the electromagnetic field, the special electromagnetic field of the Earth, wasn't or didn't exist inside the Earth from the beginning. This radioactive element didn't exist inside the Earth from the beginning. So how does Earth get this radioactive element and the other chemical element in general? We all know that I hope it's clear. We all know that the chemical elements are formed inside the star's cores. And at the end of the star's life, or during the death of the star, this star is exploded. The star is exploded. At the end of the star's life, it's exploded, at the end of the star's life, the star explode, and their fragment, which will be full of chemical elements, the fragment of the star which will be full of chemical element and called meteoroids, will separate through the space. So these meteoroids, which was carrying the chemical element and radioactive element, was actually reaching the molten floating mass of the Earth. These fragments of the star, or meteoroids, which was carrying the chemical element and radioactive element, was reaching the molten floating mass of the Earth, impacting the Earth, impacting the molten Earth, and reach its core. Maybe this will going to be a little strange, but we will explain why that's happened. Why this meteoroids must or has to reach the Earth's core. We will explain this. So why these meteoroids has to reach the Earth's core? Actually, this is because of two reasons. This must happen because of two reasons. The first one, this process explains the natural radiation of the Earth crust that we can measure today. And the second reason, this process is actually responsible for the moon, or responsible on the moon formation. This process actually formed the moon, and we will see how. But let's talk about the first reason, which is the natural radiation of the Earth crust. We all know that the Earth crust in this time has a radiation emitted. We all know at this time, not when the Earth was molten. I'm talking about this time. During this time, the Earth crust and its molten core, the Earth crust has a radiation emitted from it. And this radiation is the same amount and intensity everywhere in the Earth crust, and call it the natural radiation. And this can only happen in one way. The Earth can get this natural radiation only by one way. These meteoroids, which was the meteoroids, let's go back the molten Earth. When the Earth was molten in the space, and the meteoroids from the stars was striking it and reaching its core. This meteoroid which was impacting the molten floating earth was reaching its core, and due to the high temperature of the core, these meteoroids were also melting inside the earth, and due to the circular motion of the earth core, the chemical element was distributed equally to the outer surface of this molten earth. And this is why the intensity of the natural radiation is the same everywhere on the Earth's surface. Secondly, we're still at the stage of the molten earth. Secondly, these meteoroids, let's make it here. These meteoroids sticks to the molten floating. This meteoroid sticks to the molten floating earth was causing the magma to splash out from the earth. This strix of the meteoroid was causing the magma splashing out from the earth. Of course, at this time, there was no Earth's atmosphere. At this time, there was no Earth atmosphere. This process is just like the experience. This process is just like the experience of throwing stones in a pool of water. Which in turn, when we throw a stone in a pool of water, which in turn will cause water to splash out of the pool. That's exactly what was happening to the earth when the meteoroids was struck the molten earth. The magma was splashing out. And these fragments of magma, we said that when the meteoroid striking the earth, the magma was splashing out, and these fragments of magma which was splashed out from the earth, it was kept close to the earth. It was kept close to the planet Earth due to the effect of the force of the gravity. This fragments of the magma, it didn't go away. It's kept close to the earth because the force of the gravity. We all know that the gravity working by this way, as Einstein's proved, the mass can bend the space. So this magma fragments was kept close to the planet of the earth due to the force of the gravity, or the effect of the gravity. and it was kept close to the earth, and it was, we all know, uh, it was at what's called, it was stabilized or stabilizing at the region of low Earth orbit. Low Earth orbit. We will talk about this in a moment. So we have to keep in mind at this moment that the that this fragment of magma was which was splashed out from the earth, it was kept close to the earth due to the effect of the force of the gravity, and it was stabilized at the region of the low Earth orbit. We know we still we're still in the molten earth. We know that the earth has two orbits. The first one called low Earth orbit, and the second called the medium Earth orbit. And today, at this time, when we launch satellites, we're launching them either in the low or medium Earth orbit. Today, this day, when we launching out the satellites, we either launching them out to the low Earth orbit or to the medium Earth orbit. And at the low orbit of the Earth, the satellite is able to complete, at the low Earth orbit, the satellite is able to complete one full circle around the Earth each 19 minutes, which means it can complete 16 full circles in a day. So in the low Earth orbit, the satellite can going around or moving around the Earth 16 times per day. But in the medium Earth orbit, the satellites can only orbit around the Earth once every 12 hours or twice in a day. So let's change the paper. So the molten fragments of the magma. Let's go back to the molten earth. This is the molten earth. Which was or strike by the meteoroids, and its magma splashing out. The molten fragments of magma which was splashed out from the molten floating and spinning earth was located or seated in the low earth orbit. Was located in the low earth orbit. Which means that it was able to finish, this magma was moving around the earth 16 times per day, or it was able to finish 16 full circles around the earth per day. This molten fragments was also spinning. This molten fragments was also spinning around itself. It's spinning around the earth and spinning around itself, which made her capable or able to take the spherical or oval shaped. The meteoroid strikes was occurring in more than one direction. The meteoroid strikes was occurring in more than one direction. Let's say maybe happened from here and from here, and we will explain it. And for example, if meteoroid struck the earth from this side and the magma has splashed out an hour ago, okay? This is an example for what was happening. If a meteoroid strikes the earth from this side and the magma have been splashed out in this place, okay? This was 1 hour ago. So this magma will not be in the same place in the next hour because it's moving around the earth. This magma won't be in the same place in the next hour. So in the next hour, this magma may be in this place. This magma will move and become in this place. 1 hour later from this strike, 1 hour later, this magma will be in this position because it's moving around the earth and also moving around itself, and this motion around or spinning around itself will give it the spherical or oval shape. And let's say 1 hour after this strike, this magma which was splashed out, this magma after 1 hour will be in this position. And let's say at that moment or at this hour, another 1 hour after this strike, another meteoroid have struck the earth from this side. When this magma was at this position, when this magma moved at this position, this strike will splash another magma from this place at this position. So these two magma fragments will be able to join together. These two fragments will be able to join together and combine to form one object. These magma fragments can be combined and fused with each other very easily. These fragments can be combined and joined to each other very easily because they are molten, and due to their spinning around their axis, they will be able to take the spherical shape. So we will have this shape. This is the molten earth, and this is its magma. It's magma which splashed out from the earth. Here the first fragment which was moving from here, and here's the second fragment which was originated at this position due to the second strike. These two magma can be fused together because they are very hot and molten at their primal state and moving or spinning around their axis, so they can fuse it and form a spherical or oval shaped object. At some point, all the molten fragments was combined together. This process has it's happening many times, and all the fragments was able to combine and join together to form the molten moon. This was the molten earth, and due to combining and joining of the molten fragments, which was arising from the magma splashing out due to the meteoroid strikes, all these molten fragments at some point will join together to form the molten moon. They can join together because they was spinning around the earth very quickly. They was able to complete 16 full circles around the earth. One magma was able to complete 16 full circles around the earth because they was existed at the low earth orbit. And this process of magma splashing out from the earth was stopped at some point. Why the splashing out of the earth magma was stopped? That because the formation of the earth crust. So how the earth crust was formed? Let's see how the earth crust was formed. At the beginning of the universe, okay? What I'm going to draw right now is the molten earth. This is the molten earth, okay? At the beginning of the universe was small in size and its temperature was very high. So the water vapor couldn't condensate. The water vapor couldn't compensate on the meteoroid surfaces and form the ice. But after the universe started to expanding, its temperature became lowering down. Its temperature started to drop as well, which allowed the water vapor from condensating on the meteoroid surfaces. When the universe started to expanding, when the universe expansion is started, this causes the drop or its temperature to go down. This drop in temperature causes the water, or allowed the water vapor to condensate and form the ice in the surfaces of the meteoroids. So at this moment, the meteoroids, which was reaching the earth at this moment, it was carrying the ice to the earth. Now the meteoroids are carrying the ice and chemical elements to the earth. Ice was melting down inside the earth core. Ice was melting down in the core of the earth and turning to a gas or water vapor when ice, or when the meteoroid which carrying the ice is reaching to the earth's core. The meteoroid and ice was melting down inside the earth's core because its temperature was very high. So the ice was turning to a gas or water vapor. And this water vapor or gas was expelled out to the earth's surface. This water vapor or gas was expelled out to the earth's surface by a process which called gas expulsion. During this process, the gas was expelled out to the earth's surface or into the earth's atmosphere. At this moment, earth's atmosphere is become to formed. This gas, which was, or earth vapor, which was expelled out to the earth's surface, was condensated in the form of clouds at the earth's atmosphere. And these clouds condensate in the earth atmosphere and resulted in rainfall. These clouds resulted in rainfall, and rainfall in turn cooled the magma on the surface of the earth. This rainfall cooled down the magma at the surface of the earth, which in turn lead to the formation of the first layer of igneous rocks of the earth crust. And the newly formed earth crust was able to trap the water on top of it, thus submerging the entire surface of the earth under the water. So the entire surface of the earth at this moment was submerging under the water. And after that, the tectonic plates begin to move over each other. At this moment, the tectonic plates become moving over each other as a result of the movement of the molten core of the earth, which lead to the rise of the earth crust and the formation of the continents that we know today. And of course, the splashed out magma that we talked about it previously, the splashed out magma was collected and joined together and formed the moon after cool it down. Moon, so the picture must be right now. This is the Earth and its crust. Its crust has been formed due to the rainfall, and this is its molten core, and also this is its moon must be also cooled down due to the drop in the universe temperature. So now we have the Earth and Moon formed, and the Moon was so close to the Earth. The Moon at its beginning was too close to the Earth, so much so that the night was just as bright as the day. At this moment, or when the moon was so close to the Earth, the night was bright exactly as the day. Then the moon gradually moved away gradually until it reached its current position. So what's make the moon composition is like the Earth? That is because the moon originated from the magma of the Earth itself. During the meteoroid strikes, when the Earth was a molten floating mass spinning around itself in the space. That's why the moon looks like exactly in composition, looks like exactly like the Earth in its composition. Now we will talk about Jupiter. Jupiter was also a molten floating mass spinning around itself in space. Jupiter was also a molten floating mass spinning around itself in the universe, and it also was stricken by the meteoroids. Jupiter also was stricken by the meteoroids. And what makes the composition of Earth is different from the composition of Jupiter is that the type and percentage of chemical elements that Jupiter received from the meteoroids strikes was different from that which the Earth has received. So the chemical elements which was arriving to the Jupiter by the meteoroids was different in type and percentage from that which the Earth have been received. That what make the different in composition, in shape, and everything else. Anyway, during the meteoroid strikes to the Jupiter, the molten fragment the molten fragment or magma fragments was also splashing out of this planet too. Jupiter is larger than the Earth by Jupiter larger than the Earth by 1,300 times, which means that the magma fragment, when we said that the Jupiter is larger than the Earth by 1,300 times, that means that the magma fragment won't or will not be able to do 16 full circles around this planet in one day. So this magma maybe was able to do a quarter of a circle around this planet. So this magma was cooled down in the half of the way, and before it could join the magma which was here, for example, or here. The magma was cooled down before it can join and combine with the other magma, for example, here or here. And after it's cooled down, it's forming a separate moon. So each cluster of molten fragments around Jupiter was cooling down and forming a separate moon before it could join another cluster. And that's because the size of the planet and the large distance of the orbits, and that's why Jupiter has more than one moon and Earth has only one moon. That's why Jupiter has 79 moons and Earth has only one moon. I hope that you understand my point of view, and thank you for watching.